You know what is truly fascinating about modern financial advice? It is how effortlessly and often ruthlessly older generations diagnose the younger ones. If you listen to your typical traditional financial guru, or just scroll through the comment section of any article about the economy, the verdict on Generation Z is entirely unanimous, and frankly, a bit insulting. The narrative is that Gen Z are just impulsive, entitled children. They blow their entire paychecks on Balenciaga sneakers. They finance trips to Bali on high-interest credit cards. And they drink way too much iced matcha lattes instead of doing what they are supposed to do, saving up for a 20% down payment on a starter home. The overarching theme is that this generation simply refuses to grow up. But let us take a step back and be brutally honest for a second. Do you genuinely believe that an entire generation of human beings, tens of millions of people, suddenly just became financially illiterate and stupid overnight? Or is it perhaps infinitely more likely that they have simply adapted to an economic environment that, from their perspective, is fundamentally broken? Today we are going to dive deep into a psychological and economic phenomenon that researchers are increasingly calling financial nihilism, or more colloquially, doom spending. We are going to unpack exactly why buying heavy luxury items while sitting on an empty savings account is not a symptom of low intelligence. It is, in fact, a perfectly logical symptom of deep systemic despair. We are going to explore the broken math of the modern economy, the dopamine traps set by social media, and most importantly, we are going to map out exactly how to break free from this cycle. Because the goal here is not to shame anyone. The goal is to make sure you don't wake up at 40 years old with an impressive collection of vintage Gucci bags, zero assets, and a lingering sense of panic. To truly understand a 25-year-old today, you have to strip away the emotional bias and look at their starting line. Let us look at the cold, hard math. The baby boomers, and even the early cohorts of Generation X, largely operated within a paradigm of linear economic success. The formula was drilled into them, and more importantly, the formula actually worked. You go to school, you get a stable job, you put your head down, you save 15 to 20% of your income, and within 5 to 7 years, you have enough to buy a house, start a family, and build wealth. The math computed. Income grew at a rate that either matched or exceeded the cost of living. A single-income household could often comfortably support a family, own a couple of cars, and still manage to take an annual vacation. Now, welcome to the reality of the 2020s for a young adult. The formula is not just outdated, it feels like a cruel joke. The average starting salary for a college graduate today barely covers basic living expenses in most major metropolitan areas, largely thanks to the relentless inflation we have experienced over the last several years. The cost of groceries, utilities, and basic transportation has skyrocketed. But the real breaking point, the thing that shatters the psychological contract of the American dream, is the housing market. In the 1980s, the median home cost roughly 3 to 4 times the median household income. Today, depending on where you live, that multiplier can be 8, 10, or even 15 times. For a young professional looking at these charts, the prospect of saving a $50,000 or $100,000 down payment while paying exorbitant rent and chipping away at student loans isn't just difficult. It feels like a mathematical abstraction. It feels like chasing a mirage. The human brain is incredibly pragmatic when it comes to reward systems. When we can clearly see a reachable goal, we are entirely capable of enduring short-term deprivation to achieve it. You will easily skip the fancy dinners, say no to the concerts, and drive a beat-up car if you know with absolute certainty that this sacrifice guarantees you the keys to your own home in 36 months. In psychology, this is called delayed gratification, and it is the cornerstone of traditional wealth building. But what happens when the brain runs the numbers and realizes the goal is mathematically impossible? What happens when you do everything right? You skip the vacations, you brew your coffee at home, you split a cramped apartment with 3 roommates, and yet, because housing prices jump by 20% in a single year, that starter home is actually further out of reach today than it was when you started saving. I will tell you exactly what happens. The brain rebels. It looks at the treadmill, realizes the finish line is moving faster than you can run, and says, "To hell with this game. I cannot win the long game, so I'm going to claim my prize right here, right now." This is the essence of financial nihilism. It is the overwhelming, crushing sensation that traditional financial milestones are dead. And the logic follows. If I am mathematically locked out of ever owning a piece of real estate, and if the stock market feels like a rigged casino for billionaires, then I might as well enjoy my life today. I might as well buy the newest iPhone. I might as well get the Prada sunglasses. Or spend $2,000 on floor tickets to see Taylor Swift. Economists have long tracked a metric known as the lipstick index. This concept originated during the Great Depression and gained traction in subsequent recessions. The idea is that during times of extreme economic hardship, when people can no longer afford big-ticket items like houses or cars, the sales of affordable luxury goods, like high-end lipstick, actually skyrocket. People still desperately crave the psychological boost of a treat, a tiny slice of luxury, even when the world is burning. But Gen Z has taken this concept and put it on steroids. They have evolved the lipstick index into the Gucci index. They are not settling for $20 lipstick. They are buying premium, highly visible, status-signaling items. Why? Because we live in the era of social media. In a world where you are constantly perceived through the lens of Instagram and TikTok, social capital, how you look, the aesthetics of your life, the brands you wear, frequently replaces financial capital. If you cannot show the world a deed to a house, you can at least show them a designer logo. It is a visual shorthand for "I am doing okay," even if your bank account is in the red. Does this sound crazy to the older generation? Absolutely. But put yourself in their shoes for just a minute. Look at the world they are inheriting. They have lived through a global pandemic that stole their most formative years. They are watching geopolitical conflicts escalate daily. They are navigating an economy that swings from boom to bust with terrifying speed. And now, they are staring down the barrel of artificial intelligence, a technology that is actively threatening to automate away the very entry-level white-collar jobs they went into massive debt to secure. In an environment defined by this level of profound structural instability, the traditional advice of "put your money in a retirement account and wait 40 years" sounds not just boring, but genuinely absurd. Who knows what the world will even look like in 40 years? Doom spending, in this context, is not a lack of discipline. It is a desperate attempt to claw back some semblance of control. It is a coping mechanism. The subconscious thought process is, I cannot control interest rates, I cannot control corporate layoffs, I cannot control the housing market, but I can control what shoes I put on my feet today. I can control the aesthetic of my immediate surroundings. This is a completely valid, understandable, and deeply human emotional response. I validate that pain. But this is also the moment where I have to step in and deliver some harsh, necessary truth. The fatal flaw of financial nihilism is that it functions exactly like a painkiller and not like a cure. When you swipe your card for that designer bag or that luxury vacation, you do get a massive hit of dopamine. You feel a surge of power, a fleeting sense of wealth and arrival. For about 48 hours, you feel like you have beaten the system. But then the high wears off, the dopamine crashes, and you are left with the hangover. That luxury item begins depreciating the exact second you carry it out of the boutique. A week later, it is just another thing sitting in your closet. But the underlying anxiety, the dread about your future, the fear of instability, that hasn't gone anywhere. In fact, it has compounded, because now you still don't have a house, you still don't have security, and on top of that, you have depleted the tiny bit of liquid cash you actually had. You traded your only ammunition for a momentary distraction. And here is the most insidious part of this whole equation. The system relies on your despair. The massive multinational corporations you think you are rebelling against, they love your financial nihilism. They have teams of psychologists optimizing algorithms to make you feel inadequate, so you will buy their products to feel better. They want you to surrender. They want you to look at the housing market, throw your hands up in defeat, and decide, since I cannot be an investor, I will just be the perfect frictionless consumer. Every time you doom spend, you are taking the little capital you have generated with your labor and you are handing it straight back to the wealthiest entities on the planet. While you are busy being angry at the economy, luxury brands are reporting record-breaking quarterly profits entirely funded by your existential dread. So, how do we break out of this matrix? How do you escape the psychological trap of doom spending without turning into a miserable miser who eats rice and beans and hates their life? I'm not going to sit here and tell you to skip your daily coffee or cancel your Netflix subscription to buy a house. That is mathematical nonsense, and we both know it. We need a completely different approach. We need to hack your brain's reward system and redefine the rules of the game. Here is a comprehensive blueprint to turn your financial nihilism into financial power. Step 1. Dopamine hacking through micro-investing. We established that your brain is craving immediate gratification, a sense of control, and a confirmation of your status. The mistake is trying to suppress that urge. Instead, you need to redirect it. You need to change the instrument of your dopamine delivery. Download a modern brokerage app. Right now, today. These platforms allow you to buy fractional shares. This means you do not need $3,000 to buy a share of a massive tech company. You can buy $5 worth. Start treating the acquisition of assets the way you used to treat the acquisition of clothes. The psychological thrill of hitting buy on a piece of an S&P 500 index fund or buying a fraction of Apple or Microsoft actually triggers a very similar dopamine release as buying a pair of shoes. But here is the critical difference. Shoes decay. Assets have the potential to compound. Make wealth accumulation your new addiction. Gamify it for yourself. When you have the urge to blow $200 on a Friday night because you had a terrible week at work, take half of that money and aggressively buy a dividend-paying stock. Watch the numbers tick up. The feeling of owning a tiny sliver of the global economy provides a much deeper, more sustainable sense of control than any luxury logo ever could. Step 2. The radical redefinition of the big goal. The primary driver of your financial despair is likely a goal that no longer serves you. If the idea of buying a traditional single-family home in a major metropolitan area feels like a suffocating, impossible burden, then I give you permission right now to completely abandon that goal. Seriously, drop it. Who decreed that the ultimate measure of adulthood and success is taking on a 30-year mortgage for a concrete box? This is a boomer metric of success. We need a Gen Z metric. Shift your entire financial focus. Stop saving for a down payment and start saving for a freedom fund. Your goal is not to own drywall and plumbing. Your goal is to buy back your time and your autonomy. If you want exposure to the real estate market, you don't need to buy a house. You can invest in REITs, real estate investment trusts. These allow you to buy shares in commercial real estate, apartment complexes, and data centers. You can earn passive income from the rent other people pay using just a few dollars a week. Imagine a future where you continue to rent, which gives you the flexibility to move cities, change careers, or travel, but you have built a massive portfolio of dividend-yielding assets that pays your rent for you. That is real wealth. When you replace a rigid, outdated goal with a flexible, empowering one, the sense of doom evaporates, and with it, the urge to self-sabotage your finances. Step 3. Implementing the cost per joy metric. I want to be perfectly clear. I'm not advocating for asceticism. I'm not telling you to never spend money on fun things again. What I'm advocating for is ruthless, aggressive intentionality. Before you make any significant non-essential purchase, you need to run it through a mental calculator called the cost per joy. You take the price of the item, divide it by the estimated number of times you will use it, and multiply that by the depth of emotional resonance it will provide. Let us look at two scenarios. Scenario A. You spend $1,500 on a spontaneous trip to the mountains with your 3 best friends. You hike, you talk all night, you disconnect from the internet. The cost per joy on that is astronomical. It gives you memories that will literally sustain you for decades. It resets your nervous system. It has an incredible return on investment. Scenario B. You spend $1,500 on a designer jacket. You wear it 3 times to take photos for Instagram. By the 4th time, you are worried about spilling something on it, and by next season, the trend has changed and it feels outdated. The cost per joy is terrible. Be absolutely ferocious with your money. Spend lavishly, unapologetically, and aggressively on the few things that genuinely enrich your soul, whether that is travel, a hobby, or experiences with people you love. And become absolutely cold-blooded and merciless about cutting expenses on things that are merely designed to impress strangers on the internet. Step 4. The media diet and the cult of comparison. You cannot heal your relationship with money if you are constantly consuming content designed to make you feel impoverished. If your social media feeds are full of influencers doing luxury hauls, showcasing hyper-curated aesthetic lifestyles, and implicitly telling you that you are falling behind, you need to purge your feed. Unfollow them. Today, you are marinating your brain in a toxic stew of artificial scarcity. They are playing a completely different game, often funded by massive debt, undisclosed sponsorships, or generational wealth. You are comparing your messy, realistic behind the scenes to their highly produced highlight reel. Curate your digital environment to protect your peace. Follow people who talk about financial independence, who normalize living below your means, and who celebrate experiences over possessions. Protect your attention because your attention dictates your desires and your desires dictate your spending. Being young in the current global economy is undeniably brutal. Your intuition is not wrong. Your feeling that the rules of the game were rewritten while you were still trying to learn how to play is not paranoia. It is an objective macroeconomic fact. Housing is unreasonably expensive. The job market is shifting beneath our feet. And the algorithmic pressure to perform success 24/7 is exhausting. But choosing to cope with this reality by funneling your hard-earned cash into depreciating luxury goods is not a rebellion against a broken system. It is the ultimate capitulation to it. It is doing exactly what the architects of this system want you to do. The true rebellion in the 21st century is not wearing a designer logo. The true rebellion is financial literacy. It is refusing to play the game of show me how much you are worth. The most punk rock thing you can possibly do in a society that demands you consume until you die is to quietly, methodically build your own capital. Whether you start with $10 a week or $100 a month, every dollar you invest is a tiny brick in a fortress of your own autonomy. Stop feeding the corporations with your anxiety and your despair. Stop trying to look wealthy and start doing the quiet, unglamorous work of actually becoming wealthy. Take your power back. Build your freedom fund. Because the economy might be rigged, but that does not mean you have to volunteer to be its next victim. Start feeding your future.